Welcome everyone to the TED Talks YouTube channel. You join me again with Mr. Andy Camp, and we are going to be talking today about investors. We're going to be talking about, a clean cut, you can tell which one's my favorite already, a clean cut loan from an investor with like a percentage return or like, some payment, no equity, no jumping in bed, nothing. Then the other side, which is having a JV or having a business partner where they have shares in their business, they have some sort of equity, and it's not just a percentage rate. It can also be, this is where it gets a bit complex, but it's usually like, well, you own 40% of this deal, you get 40% of the profit, which also means you have 40% of the risk. But we'll get to that. So, let's get into it. What do you prefer? Let me give you two situations. Investor giving you £100,000, I know it's too small for your deals, but £100,000
Yep.
at 8%, which I think is respectable. It's probably a bit too high in this market, just if you're watching.
Nice.
Yeah. You got prime payment, wasn't it? And then, or someone giving you £120,000. Let's say you need 120, so you got 100k at 8%, or you got 120 at 50% JV. All you Instagrammers who want 50% for giving nothing. What would you pick?
Okay, it comes down to the first thing: is this into your business or is this into a project?
A project that you need 120 grand for.
Okay, so I think,
but you can raise, like, this is not just the end all be all. This is just your first level, I suppose, your first round.
Yeah, fine. I think the numbers won't work for the equity. It's all there, probably, but debt is always a preference normally, because normally if you're doing a good enough deal, if you're confident enough in yourself, you should be willing to take the debt on. It's kind of where I start.
Okay. And if that same situation, the JV was, 20%, are we in the same situation? Because remember, you're getting 120 from one person versus 8%, 100 from one person.
It starts to look more attractive, doesn't it? I think it's a spreadsheet game, right? You
Yep.
start to look at, okay, well, what's my profit? How much am I going to be giving away? Okay, my 20% share on 50 grand profit is, okay, it's looking quite similar here.
Yeah.
And so you start to look, okay, well, these are two similar scenarios, but I'm losing 20% risk here. So maybe my equity makes sense now.
Do you think then, so then I suppose after that step, because you mentioned risk there, the risk is then, I suppose, also shared with that 20% JV person, but also you're now commercially in bed with someone, I know it's only 20%, so it's not a controlling share, but you're kind of now linked for the sake of 20 grand or for the sake of getting your deal fully funded. Does that come into play where you think, oh, I'd rather not?
100%. I think there's ways you can mitigate that. There's agreements you can put in place. There's things lawyers can draw up for you that you can kind of mitigate the risk that you're on about them disrupting your business in some way, them putting you in a position if they get into debt, all sorts of stuff. They're the risks you're on about, right?
Yeah.
So I think, there's ways you can mitigate that, but I would never go into an equity deal blind. Like, nearly everyone who kind of speaks on Instagram and YouTube, they always say, like, we will not joint venture with you until we've done some debt with you. And I totally get that, and I'm exactly the same. I would never jump into an equity share with someone without really understanding how they work, what their goals are, what are they actually trying to achieve from this deal. That's the first start.
Let's say someone is giving you 10 million cash, 6% happy days, or 10 million on a JV. When could equity, in that scenario, I can't think of, just on that pure kind of numbers basis, a way where equity is ever better than debt. But you have a really good point about this.
I think, like, for us, one thing that's been key is like looking at our risk profile as a company. You've got, it's not something that's as key when you're kind of starting out, you're scraping together cash, you're trying to recycle your money as quickly as you can, kind of every pound counts, if you like. But later on, like kind of where we're at now is you start to have conversations when you're running several projects at once of, okay, we've now got 1.5, 1.8, 2 million, whatever that debt number is. This is the amount of debt we've got. Oh, and here's another project, and it requires another 1.4 million pounds worth of debt. That's when the conversations start to get different in my head.
And then also, all this debt, for people who don't realise, is on a personal guarantee, usually, especially if it's from a bank. And plus, no one's going to give you that much without a PG. If they do, I mean, there's something's wrong with them.
Keep using them.
Yeah. You know, it's all going to be on your head, literally, and on those shoulders, not on the company. Like back in the day, obviously, people used to just do all this shit and close the company and run off.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen anymore unless you're a builder. Then you don't carry on. It's part of your business. So that's an interesting point. And I suppose when you get to that level, like those new build houses, you know, the executive homes you're talking about, there's enough margin, there's enough fat in this deal. You could give away 30% of the profit or something like that because you're working at a certain level. So I suppose my question is, for someone who isn't at that level, when you get to that, because if I think now, oh my god, 40% is just, I'd rather not do the deal. When you get to that level, is it worth it? Does it make sense? Does it add up?
Yeah, I think that's what you've said there is basically it in a nutshell. What someone really like close to me said right at the beginning of like when I started running businesses was like, you sleeping at night is worth way more than any profit you make. And like that for me is so key. I've had points in my career where I've been like pulling my hair out because I'm really worried about some things. And you have to look at yourself and look at your own, what you can tolerate, what risk profile you can tolerate. And that plays right into that equation. So you might be in your first deal and begging to take the second deal on, but you sit there and think, I can't take the stress of that. But what's better, don't take on the deal because you can't take the stress of that, or go 50-50 or 40-60 or whatever it is with someone and get that deal done.
50 of something's better than 0 of nothing, they say, right?
Exactly.
You know what, that's a really good point. You know, as I was growing, I didn't think about that. Because I suppose that's my risk level. I was comfortable with it because I knew, got a first charge, worst case comes to worst, it's so BMV this deal. I suppose logically my brain didn't even think about that. It was just like, well, if they repossess and they sell it, they'll get their money back as a minimum. So I kind of was like, actually, logically this is fine. So I was totally fine with having, you know, half a mil of debt at any time. But that's a really good point, because just because I was okay with it and I didn't think about it doesn't mean that people watching, especially when they're new, who see like your deals, see my growth and say, oh, I want to do it that quickly, I want to buy all these buy-to-lets in this many months or do these big, you know, commercial conversions, dial it back a bit, because there's something in our heads, or in your head here, that's like, am I comfortable with this? Am I happy with this? And some people might not be, because you've never taken debt on before. You've been raised where it's not something, there's so many factors that go into it. And yeah, you know what, you're kind of, I still don't really like JVs, but you're kind of opening my eyes, I suppose, live to like the other element, which is the risk element. And I suppose if you are going to JV with someone, Andy, it goes without saying, but you are going to be telling them like, look, if you're having 40% of this profit, you're having 40% of the downside and the liability. And I don't know, that should put some people off. Yeah,
and that's when sometimes you end up having to go to more sophisticated investors or equally someone with some knowledge base, and you might give away a bit more as well. But then I throw it back at you. Had you have been at your like maximum growth point, 10, 12 refurbs on, or whatever it is, or amount of debt on, and you get commercial conversion project come up and you need to raise £1 million for it in one hit, would you go to the bank?
I wouldn't give equity still.
You wouldn't? Interesting.
No, because, well, firstly, I wouldn't even do a deal like that. Can't be asked for the complexity. Can't be asked, man.
True.
Like, I'd do it here, like you're doing it locally. Yeah, like I would 100% do it locally. You're going to project manage it, obviously. Andy's already agreed. But like my growth point, I wouldn't have done it at that distance. What I would have probably done is got it and traded it on an auction, or just you know what I mean, got rid of it. So
yeah, fair enough.
My answer is not no. It's I would do something totally different. I wouldn't even be in that situation where I need to raise it. But like if I get one now, if I can find a business partner who can be a project manager and who can do the stuff I hate, and I'll do all the keyboard warrior stuff, I'll fight the solicitors, I'll do everything, I'll rate whatever. Yeah. Done. Yeah. I would consider it.
I think that's the key point there, right? Is for you is finding a way of getting a deal done.
Yeah.
That's what it is. For you, that might be trading it off.
Yeah.
For someone else, that might be taking an equity share. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to for me, is like, if a deal needs to be done, let's find a way to get it done. And sometimes that's equity. Yeah. Hopefully that's debt, and you can take all of the upside. And sometimes, on a very rare occasion, the numbers aren't too different.
Yeah, and
the deal's good enough.
That is rare, but yeah, on an occasion, if you balance it all in, I can see taking the commercial risk into it as well and all that stuff, and the human risk we haven't spoken about, because like I know we've spoken about your business partner before, but like at least with JVs, especially when people are kind of rushing in, perhaps I suppose like with any relationship, what's the divorce rate? 50%. It's that for a reason, and I bet the JV breakup rate is higher.
Yeah.
No one puts that on social media, do they? But like, you really have to also think about, can I work with this person long term? Like maybe before you set up a SPV, before you do any of that stuff, maybe just sit, like spend days together, just working, see how each other works, set each other tasks, and see the response for it, vetting each other in some way, right?
Yeah.
And both be kind of open about it, I suppose, because it's important to see and understand how people behave and how they are naturally and how they take being spoken to. Because if someone's not doing something, and this is pre-JV, you want to kind of be able to say, bro, come on, what are you doing? And you want to be able to say it to each other in a way that kicks you both up the arse. And not like, why are you telling me off?
100%.
It has to be a kind of balance. So, gun to your head, you doing debt or are you doing equity?
Debt.
Yeah, debt. I think that's pretty obvious.
We're doing debt.
Doesn't even need to be a gun to your head. It could be. It is what it is. So, everyone, thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit the bell icon so you're notified when I visit all of Andy's other properties and we release our other videos.